We are in the Song of Solomon. It's chapter 4 now. In chapter 4, it leaves the scene and description of the royal palace, the garden and the beauty and the state-like depiction of the mansion, and it comes back to the man speaking now. Verse 1. Behold, you are fair, my love. Behold, you are fair. You have dove's eyes behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats going down from Mount Gilead. Well, brethren, the people who have never been around the goats, they cannot really understand this. It doesn't ring the bell for them. Well, this is man's description of the quality and culture and the beauty of the woman, and goats are really very beautiful creatures indeed. And then he mentions her eyes. Well, the depth of eyes reflects one's character and personality, so the character is reflected through the eye. Verse 2, your teeth are like a flock of shorn sheep, which have come up from the washing, every one of which bears twins, and anon is barren among them. Well, we notice detailed description, Well, of course, in our day and age, it is easy to say, I love you, but it is a lot harder to get details and talk about your wife's smile, or her dimples, or her beauty mark on the back of the neck, etc. All teeth are all pairs. Well, God does things symmetrically, by the way, and thus we don't have one arm and one leg, but some people are like that in their character, there is no harmony and teamwork with them. Your lips are like a strand of scarlet, and your mouth is lovely. Your temples behind your veil are like a piece of pomegranate. Well, as you know, pomegranates, it's a very healthy herb, and it is talking about a healthy look, her rosy lips, her rosy cheeks. Your neck, verse 4, is like the Tower of David, built for an armory, on which hang 1,000 bucklers, all sheets of mighty men. Well, you see, there is a stateliness, so to speak, in her neck, like the Tower of David. Verse 5, your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle, which feed among the lilies. Well, brethren, if people didn't keep the mystery and secretiveness, if they were always honest and open and frank, like the way God is, then men would perhaps not be that tempted or deluded by enticement and things. The breasts are beautiful things God created, among other things, just like the neck, just like the lips, just like the teeth, anyway. Until, it says verse 6, the day breaks and the shadows flee away. I'll go my way to the mountain of mirth and to the hill of frankincense. That is going back to what she said back in verse 17. So she is desiring the day of his return, when his job is out there, is over, and he is full of desire to come back to her. So now he is longing for that day as well, you see. He is looking forward to the time when he can be with his bride at home again. It is mirth and frankincense. It is not strange. You see, when the Bible speaks about a strange woman, in the Hebrew language it means alien. So any other woman except yours is strange. She is a stranger. Verse 7, you are all fair, my love, and there is no spot in you, or wrinkle in you. You see, that is exactly, brethren, what Christ meant when he said the church will have no wrinkle, the church will have no spot, no anomaly. It is going to be perfect. That is the way a man, ought to feel about his wife. So now he is longing for the day when he will return home. He's going to his mountain of mirth. Do we ever think like that when we are going home? You are going back to your hill of frankincense. Verse 8, come with me from Lebanon. Lebanon is on the north, so obviously they had a resort somewhere in the north where they could retreat and enjoy their love. So it says, come with me from Lebanon, my spouse, with me from Lebanon. Look from the top of Amana, or Ammon, from the top of Senir and Hermon, from the lion's dens, from the mountains of the leopards. In other words, again, they're coming, to the top of mountains in that area and looking and admiring all the beauty. Now, Lebanon is mentioned, so obviously there was a resort where they were able to retreat. Verse 9, You have ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. You have ravished my heart with one look of your eyes, with one link of your necklace. Well, brethren, the Apostle Paul asked Corinthians in chapter 9 of Corinthians, chapter 9 of the first Corinthians, he said whether Apollos and him, the Apostle Paul, had not authority to lead a sister as a wife. Now, that is a perfect description of a marriage. Do married men, Christ followers, think of their wives as spiritual sisters? Well, that is what she is, really, brethren. You lead a spiritual sister as a wife. She's not a piece of your property. She's not a second-rate citizen or second in any way. Now, you see, humankind has brought on itself this women liberation movement. When we see how women are treated in some parts of the world or in some cultures, the Arab culture, Albania, etc., what else could we expect? You know, those women are for hard work and bearing children. In those cultures, we don't see women who would dare to venture into the Bible description of beauty and dignity and softness and tenderness. They're supposed to be a worker, a vigorous and practical individuals, not just something to look at. In some parts of the world, women are right next to camels when it comes to importance. That is too bad, brethren. A woman is made in God's image. She's really made in man's image, but, man is made in God's image. Well, in this verse we read, one look of your eyes. Well, that must be tempting him and teasing him, which is a beautiful for a wife to do with her husband, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, we also see that necklaces are in good taste if they're appropriate for the size of a woman or a style of a woman or whatever. Verse 10, how fair is your my love, my sister, my spouse. Do you notice this? My sister, my spouse. This is what he first says, my sister, then he says, my spouse. How much better than wine is your love, and the scent of your perfumes than all spices. Your lips, O my spouse, drip as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under your tongue, and the fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. In other words, what she has to say, because what her lips have to say, it's sweet and nourishing. What she has to say is healthy. Well, brethren, honeycombs are one of the healthiest things men can eat. And it will be healthy to start to think of your wife as your spiritual sister. God gives you a privilege of leading about a sister as a wife. You don't lord it over her. That is God's heritage. Remember that. 1 Peter chapter 5, Peter warns everybody in authority, and we had something to say about that on Tuesday night on our Bible study. I spoke about the proper authority in the church and how it is being exercised. Well, we read 1 Peter 5. Peter warns everybody in authority not to lord over people, for they are God's heritage. But he tells those in authority to be examples. So God didn't give you your wife as a piece of property you own. She is not inferior to you. It says in the Bible indeed that women are weaker vessels, but that doesn't refer to mental capacities. That is, none of those weaknesses related to character are related to character or potentials as far as God's family is concerned. They're weaker in other ways. Now notice Solomon always says, as I brought to your attention, my sister first and my spouse secondly. And then he mentions in this verse, we have just read in verse 11, he mentions honey and milk. Honey and milk are under her tongue. Now again, milk is one of those perfect foods. Whether it's rich in calcium, it's one of the essentials. Now if God said that the land is flowing with milk and honey, you cannot get any more perfect foods. Now there are two things that exist in nature that have all the food values that man ever discovered. One of them is wheat, and the other one is milk. And he'll have something to say about wheat later, but notice going on then how the woman's speech, how her counsel, how her romantic expressiveness to her husband is. Her lips are as honeycomb and milk. Now how about if you are negative, arguing, sarcastic, Solomon says it is better to dwell in a corner of the housetop than with a nagging wife. So contrast those and think about perfection and the opposite of what is said in verse 11. Now there is even something about the scent of somebody that you love. It is something of their wives that husbands just enjoy. The natural smell, the natural scent, not even the perfume, but the person herself. As we have just read also here, the fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. Verse 12, a garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. You see, now he likens the beauty of his wife to a relaxing walking around beautiful flowers and shrubs and trees and all enclosed privacy and beauty. That is the way his wife is to him. She is like a cool, refreshing water, brethren, or a fountain. That's what she is. Your plants, verse 13, are an orchard of pomegranates with pleasant fruits, fragrant henna with spikenard and saffron, calmus and cinnamon, with all trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, with all the chief spices. So he is now likening his wife to all these things that make up this garden. Verse 15 continues again, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon. Well, you see, almost the whole chapter, the man is praising his wife. Verse 16, awake, O north wind, and come, O south. Blow upon my garden, that its spices may flow out. Let my beloved come to his garden and eat its pleasant fruits. So, you see, she responds to his expressiveness, and she wants him to come on back from his job, from his wanderings with the flocks. Chapter 5. Now he answers her and says, verse 1, I have come to my garden, my sister, my spouse. I have gathered my mirth with my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb with my honey. I have drunk my wine with my milk. Eat, O friends. Obviously this is a feast now, and he invited even his friends to enjoy this beautiful, perfect marriage and his home. Eat, O friends. Drink, yes, drink deeply, O beloved ones. Well, brethren, here in verse 1, we have a little hidden health advice. Now, before I get to that, just to bring to your attention the fact that he is now likening his return home and his being back with his wife and his lover to this. So here is another, as I said, health advice. I have drunk, he says, my wine with my milk. Well, if you said that to health counselors or whatever, or even to our parents, I think they would be horrified. But Brendan, this is what it says in the Bible. This is the scripture. Look, if someone is having nightmares and they cannot sleep, take wine and milk. Oh, you heard me well. Take wine and milk. I know this is shocking, but this is what it is. If you have a hard time sleeping, whether you're going through a change or you just have normal difficulty sleeping, well, brethren, in the evening, drink a glass of wine, and then through the same evening, drink a glass of milk, and you're going to sleep. This is what it is. This is a health advice. This is a revelation to you, I guess, but here it is. Now, I have to say, and I've tasted that. I've never tasted, wine and milk. Those two simply never crossed my mind. But some people, including myself, they have used beer. I use beer from time to time in the evening for relaxing, to help calm your nerves, to help as a sleeping agent. Indeed, it did help my sleep. But if you would drink wine with beer, it will work for a while, but then you have to desist from that habit for several weeks and it would work again. Why do you have to desist? Well, because, when it comes to wine and milk, you don't have to adjust to any amounts. It's just one glass. It works at all times. It works permanently. Your body doesn't have to adjust, as in the case of wine and beer. When it would want, your body would want to take more and more of those, wine and beer, because of what you would have to go off, and because of that you will have to go off of it for weeks and several months, and then get back to it. But with milk and wine, one glass of milk, a glass of wine, it's permanent. There is no side effects, and you can always use it. It's something permanent. So here is one advice, something that perhaps you never thought about. And here it is, brethren, right here, revealed to us in the Holy Scriptures. Amazing, isn't it? You see, we keep growing all the time. We keep learning things all the time. That's how it should be. The moment you stop changing, that moment you stop being the Church of God, Mr. Armstrong would thunder if he were alive. Now, honeycomb is mentioned. If you eat honeycomb, you'll have health benefits from it. I'm sure you know it because, brethren, there is so much praise of honeycombs, and we can all look it up either in literature or on internet, or how beneficial it is to body. For example, just to give you one important thing about honeycomb, brethren, do you know that no germ can live in honey for 3 minutes? Put any germ that you want in honey, and it cannot live even 3 minutes because the honey absorbs the moisture out of the cells, and those germs die. So when God talks about these things in nature, it is better for us to practice them. Even with this milk and wine, never crossed my mind. Probably never crossed your mind. So eat honey with a honeycomb. Drink wine with milk, brethren. As in this verse, he has apparently invited, as I said, some of his friends to enjoy his beautiful home and perfect marriage. Now, after he told her about the wine and the milk, then he returns to the theme of not being able to sleep again. Now, it's her dream now. Verse 2, I sleep, but my heart is awake. It is the voice of my beloved. He knocks, saying, open for me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is covered with dew, my locks with the drops of the night. Well, here she is dreaming again, but what a wonderful words to say to your wife or a husband. So this time, instead of coming home after the day breaks, he didn't come. He comes to her in her dream. So she's dreaming he's coming at night. Verse 3. And then what happens? I've taken off my robe. How can I put it on again? I have washed my feet. How can I defile them? My beloved put his hand by the latch of the door, and my heart yearned for him. I arose to open for my beloved, and my hands dripped with mirth, my fingers with liquid mirth on the handles of the lock. Oh, is somebody ashamed of this? Brethren, what's wrong with this? This is Scripture. Please get rid of the Catholic shame and all of these shames. There's nothing shameful about this. We need to explain to our children normal things about what God created in us as the power of, sexual intercourse and marriage and so on. Now, the thing is here, he couldn't call her and tell her when he will come home. There were no mobile phones and landline phones, no internet back in those days. So she had to be ready any time. So any night she went to bed, she got herself ready because he might just appear. And he always surprised her coming, so she kept herself ready any time. And then what happens? But she's dreaming, it's verse 6. I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had turned away and was gone. My heart leaped up when he spoke. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called him, but he gave me no answer. Well, you see, she's now showing how much she missed him when he was gone, how much she longed for him to be back. And she has this dream, and she gets up to open the door, and he isn't there. Verse 7, here is another duality. The watchmen who went about the city found me. They struck me, they wounded me. The keepers of the walls took my veil away from me. Well, brother, apparently, as I said, here is another duality, talking about the way Christ was treated. And yet, in the literal sense, they didn't help her find her lover, so they wounded her in that sense, They took her veil, which women back in those days kept not to attract other men by their beauty, is totally opposite to our world today. You see, remember when Isaac was to be married, his parents didn't say, well, go there and look for the most physically beautiful one. No, brethren, they wanted God to pick up a wife for Isaac. So the servants of Abraham said, well, I would ask one to draw me water, and that will show me the one who is designated. And indeed, she was the right one. She even offered to water his animals. Now, of course, when she was brought back to Isaac, she was veiled because she wanted to be sure he appreciated her for what she was, regardless what she looked like. Now, that was always true back then. That is why they always had veils for the women. It is probably why Jacob did not know the difference between Rachel and Leah when he worked 7 years for them, you see. That's how they were able, because he obviously never saw their face, they were always veiled, so that's probably how they, succeeded to dupe him. Do you now understand better why? Now, it would be dumb, of course, in our day, because we do just the opposite. We want everybody to see everything available so they will know what they're going to get and what they're looking for, and people get slipped over the appearance and physique, and that is so wretched, brethren. It is one of the big causes of our marriage problems. And again, we have to tell our children about all this, without any shame, without any hiding away from the facts, but we have to tell our children as it is, for their own good. Now notice right away after she talks about this bad dream and the fear of losing her lover, the reality of not being able to find him, then she has another lesson for the daughters of Jerusalem. Verse 8. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, that you tell him I'm lovesick. What is your beloved? More than another beloved, they ask her, obviously. O fairest among women, what is your beloved more than another beloved that you so charge us? Well, you see, she tells them she needs her husband back home and she wants him, and the daughters of Jerusalem now are trying to find out what makes her husband so special. You know, what makes your beloved more than any other beloved? Now she is about to tell them what makes her beloved so special. Verse 10. My beloved is white and ruddy, chief among 10,000. Now the word for ruddy in Hebrew is Adam, exactly the same word that's used for men. Now, as you remember, man was made of the reddish dust, so he is red, he is reddish, that's what means ruddy. He is white and ruddy indeed. He has got probably ginger hair, as we would say. So he's white with ginger hair. And you notice probably in many Israelitish nations today, there are plenty of those who have ginger hair. And some of us here, when we let our beards grow, myself included, we can notice some ginger nuances and ginger color there. So that always, to me, that's an indication of Israelitish origin in my ancestry indeed. In any way, he's white and ruddy. Verse 11, his head is like the finest gold, meaning value of gold, brethren. His intellect, his mind power, his locks are wavy and black as a raven. His eyes are like doves by the rivers of waters, washed with milk and fitly set. His cheeks are like a bed of spices, banks of scented herbs. His lips are lilies, dripping liquid mirth. So you see, his lips are like lilies dropping mirth. In other words, what he says is sweet and encouraging and gentle and understanding. Verse 14, his hands are like rods of gold, set with beryl. His body is carved ivory, inlaid with sapphires. So you see, he has strength in his loins. He is strong, masculine shape. Nothing like in our day after 6,000 of man's degeneracy. When you look at some men, you just wonder what happened to the male sex and what happened to the male gender. Verse 15, his legs are pillars of marble, set on bases of fine gold. His countenance is like Lebanon, excellent as the cedars. In other words, stately, dignified, cultured. Verse 16, his mouth is most sweet. It's not gruff, negative, authoritarian, brethren. It's most sweet. Yes, he is altogether lovely. This is my beloved, and this is my friend. O daughters of Jerusalem, you see, he is her friend, in fact, her best friend. Chapter 6. So now, they're asking her, verse 1, where has your beloved gone? Oh, where, fairest among women, where has your beloved turned aside that we may seek him with you? Well, she continues, she answers, my beloved has gone to his garden, to the beds of spices, to to feed his flock in the gardens and to gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He feeds his flock among the lilies. And now finally the answer comes back from the man. Verse 4, O my love, you are as beautiful as Tirzah, lovely as Jerusalem, awesome as an army with banners. Turn your eyes away from me, for they have overcome me. Your hair is like a flock of goats going down from Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep which have come up from the washing. Everyone bears twins, and none is barren among them. So he repeats the same description of her beauty as before. Verse 7, like a piece of pomegranate are your temples behind your veil. There are 60 queens and 80 concubines and virgins without number. Oh, brethren, here we are. We do know how many wives and concubines Solomon had, but there is only one that was perfect, and she is pictured here. So no, the Song of Solomon is not about sexual immorality. The Song of Solomon is praising sex in marriage or marital love, if you want. So there is nothing that is immoral about this book at all, brethren. It's speaking about one man, one woman marriage, and how it's supposed to be perfect and work. There is a perfect match for each. So yes, he experimented with so many women, and other men in the Bible did. God allowed it for the hardness, because of the hardness of your heart, as he said. And he allowed it, brethren, for us to see the consequences, and for us to tell our children about those consequences. Remember Jacob with 2 wives, a hell. And here we have the wisest man ever in human history, Solomon, with so many women that he could experiment with, and yet only one was perfect for him, and this one is described in his book. We need to tell our children about this. Our sons and daughters, brethren, for their own good. Well, whether they heed or not, that's their choice. But we must not be filled with shame and shun away from explaining to our youth things that they should know. So, 60 queens. Can you believe that? He had 60 queens and 80 concubines and virgins without numbers. Oh, word. But there is only one that is pictured here. Verse 9. My dove, my perfect one, that's what she is the only one. Exactly. The only one of her mother, the favorite of the one who bore her or gave birth to her. The daughter saw her, the daughter of the same mother, the daughter saw her and called her blessed, the queens and the concubines, and they praised her. You see, the daughters of the same mother, they saw this sister as the most attractive, and this one wife was looked up by all the concubines who praised her. Verse 10, who is she who looks forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, awesome as an army with banners? I went down to the garden of nuts to see the verdure of the valley, or the greenery of the valley, to see whether the wine had budded and the pomegranates had bloomed. Before I was even aware, my soul had made me as the chariots of my noble people. Return, return, O Shulamite. Return, return, that we may look upon you. What would you see in the Shulamite? As it were, the dance of the 2 camps. Now, of course, this is talking about this beautiful woman, Shulamite. Now, the name Shulamite in Hebrew means feminine or peaceful. And later in a moment, we're going to see that she brought peace to him. She's peaceful, or she's feminine. Chapter 7, how beautiful are your feet in sandals, O prince's daughter. The curves of your thighs are like jewels, the work of the hand of a skillful workman. Your navel is a rounded goblet. It lacks no blended beverage. Your waist is a heap of wheat. Here is the wheat. Heap of wheat set about with lilies. Your 2 breasts are like 2 fawns twins of a gazelle. Your neck is like an ivory tower, your eyes like the pools in Heshbon by the gate of Bath Rabbim. Your nose is like the tower of Lebanon, which looks towards Damascus. So you see, here is a man that is acquainted with geography of the Middle East and things that are striking to a king. You see, the highlights of physical realm remind him of the beauty of his wife, whether it is her eyes, nose, neck, or whatever. Verse 5, your head crowns you like Mount Carmel, and the hair of your head is like purple, the dignity of royalty. A king is held captive by your tresses. How fair and how pleasant you are, O love, with your delights. This stature of yours is like a palm tree, and your breasts like its clusters. I said, I'll go up to the palm tree, I'll take hold of its branches. Let now your breast be like clusters of the wine, the fragrance of your breath like apples, and the root of your mouth like the best wine. The wine goes down smoothly for my beloved, moving gently the lips of sleepers. And then the woman answers again in verse 10, I am my beloved's, and his desire is toward me. Come, my beloved, let us go forth to the field, let us lodge in the villages, let us get up early to the vineyards, let us see if the wine has budded, whether the grape blossoms are open, and the pomegranates are in bloom. There I'll give you my love. The mandrakes give off a fragrance, and at our gates are pleasant fruits, all manner, new and old, which I have laid up for you, my beloved. So here again, they're talking about a walk together and enjoying the beauty of the surroundings and each other's love in conjunction with that. And here we are in the last chapter, chapter 8. Hopefully again, nobody's offended and nobody is feeling ashamed. Please overcome that, brethren. We're reading here about natural things that are present in God-blessed marriage. So chapter 8. Now here the woman is speaking again, and it is very important what we are going to read in chapter 8. It's important for your parents, it's important for your young maidens, or young ladies, virgins, and young men, but especially for the young ladies. This Shulamite, this feminine woman, has got very important advice for all female sex. So here is the woman speaking again, verse 1. Oh, that you were like my brother, who nursed at my mother's breasts. If I should find you outside, I would kiss you, I would not be despised. I would lead you and bring you into the house of my mother, she who used to instruct me. I would cause you to drink of spiced wine, of the juice of my pomegranate. By the way, verse 1, no, it's not about incest. It has nothing to do with that, brethren. Incest is a horrible sin forbidden by God. No. It's misunderstanding, alright? So we'll just clarify that in a minute. But verse 2, I want to bring your attention to right now, because here again is the picture of how to be sure, young ladies, how to be sure that you are not going to be misled or deluded, and have wisdom of the mother to help you in being sure that you have got the right person. Maybe a mother has more of an ability to perceive the kind of a man that would make her daughter happy. Women, it seems, have more ability to perceive such things than men. But, because father is not even mentioned here, so she talks about taking him to her mother's house and having her mother instruct her and getting her mother's counsel and wisdom. Now, apparently, she's saying in verse 1 that she wishes she could have shared life with him from her birth. That's the meaning of verse 1, brethren. It certainly is not saying, I wish you were my brother and I could marry my brother. That's despicable. That is certainly not saying that, because that can only produce difficulties and complications and horrible things. I have no need to elaborate on that. So apparently it is saying, when you find the one that you love, you wish you enjoyed the companionship of that person from the birth. That's exactly what is the meaning of verse 1. Verse 3. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand embraces me. So that is certainly a scene of marriage. But then she comes back charging the daughters of Jerusalem in verse 4. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. Please ready notice there is no, do not awaken my love. That my is some translations addition. It should not be there. It doesn't make any sense. She is a married woman. Her love is awakened anyway, and she has every reason to have her love awakened. So, there is no my. It says to the daughters of Jerusalem, do not stir up, awaken love until it pleases. So, young ladies, mothers, fathers, one of the greatest lessons of the Songs of Solomon, of the Song of Solomon, is that your young virgins or young maidens are so captivated by marriage and a handsome, desirable, stately, kingly man that should just be admonished about don't stir up love. Don't awaken love. You better leave the powers in your nature dormant until God brings the right one along for you, and then unload those on one another in marriage, and you will have a great marriage. So if you do everything before marriage that should be saved for after getting married, well, it is no wonder then that, the number one question people ask of the marriage counselors, and they ask others and themselves, is why don't we love each other the way we used to? Well, no wonder. If you have done everything before marriage with all kinds of different people, then what is there to make a marriage such a powerful, tremendous thing? So I charge you, daughters of Jerusalem, not to stir up nor awaken love until God provides the right man. Verse 5. Who is this coming up from the wilderness, leaning upon her beloved? Well, now this is, that is repeated from what we read earlier. So here are they walking around with each other, arms around their necks. I awakened you under the apple tree. So he now boasting. There your mother brought you forth. There she who bore you brought forth her to him. You see, so this is now husband. He's boasting about how he was able to provide for her from the time of her age for marriage, and how he, as the apple tree that we read about earlier, nourished her and sheltered her and protected her, and how he appreciated the job of her mother, bringing her up until the time for marriage. And then she who bore her brought her to him. In other words, gave her in marriage to him. And now in the next verse, the man is set as a seal upon her heart, as a seal upon her arm. Verse 6, set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. For love is as strong as death, jealousy as cruel as the grave. Its flames are flames of fire, a most vehement flame. Well, love is as strong as death. It means it lasts as long, brethren. It is meant to be permanent. Verse 7, many waters cannot quench love, nor can the floods drown it. If a man would give for love all the wealth of his house, it would be utterly despised. In other words, you can have millions and millions of dollars and euros, but that cannot buy a happy marriage. No way. And now it ends, again, with a warning, again, about this sister, the wife, that had younger sisters that were daughters of Jerusalem, to whom she said, don't get love stirred up in your nature when you get into puberty or start to develop femininity, or when you're in teenage years. Verse 8, we have a little sister and she has no breasts. What shall we do for our sister in the day when she is spoken for? If she is a wall, we will build upon her a battlement of silver. In other words, hold out and don't give love like an open door. Hold out like a wall. And if she is a door, we will enclose her with boards of cedar. In other words, build a fence around these who are too young, brethren. Protect them, shelter them. Don't let them to have their nature or passion or love stirred up before the time. Verse 10, I am a wall, and my breasts like towers. Then I became in his eyes as one who found peace. That's what her name means. Shulamite, peaceful or feminine. Well, you see, the better translation perhaps should be, I was a wall, because here the bride looks back and remembers how she was undeveloped young girl before. And then she came to the development stage for the marriage, and she says, I was a wall. In other words, she kept herself fenced in and walled from lovers and aggressors. And there are plenty of those. Predators, lovers, aggressors around. Young girls, don't experiment. You'll make your life a hell. You read probably once in a while, always in the newspapers, warning of the victims of the various predators, aggressors, and so on. Keep your chastity, young girls. And then what happens with the Shulamite? You know, she was a wall, and then she found peace or favor with him because she kept herself for a husband. Verse 11. Solomon had a vineyard at Baal Haman. He leased the vineyards to keepers. Everyone was to bring for its fruit 1,000 silver coins. Now this is a fact of history because Solomon really did have a vineyard like this. So now she likens in duality, my vineyard, which is mine, is before me. So there is a literal vineyard and there is a vineyard that he has with her, because my own, verse 12, vineyard is before me. You, O Solomon, may have 1,000, because of course he had 1,000 wives. You may have 1,000, and those who tend its fruit 200. You who dwell in the gardens, the companions, listen for your voice. Let me hear it. And brethren, now the last comment. Out of the mouth of this Shulamite, of this woman, after she has had this admonition to her little sisters, and looking back when she was a young girl before marriage, and now she is Solomon's vineyard, as he had a little vineyard. Now in ending she says, verse 14, make haste, my beloved, and be like a gazelle on the mountain of spices. In other words, coming back to your home and your garden and your marriage. Brethren, this is scripture. We need to all learn from it so that it can be helpful both in our present time and also in the soon coming millennium.